Hey everybody from Beantown to your town. This is the
Beantown Beatdown.
Yep, I'm Matthew Burris here.
Gabe Shamus, also coming at you from Beantown.
Yep, we're gonna get it cracking open here with some cold ones, some Bud Light Margarita. Sorry, I have a hard time opening it up.
That's not the way I'd go for it, but
Yeah. By the way, I'm a little pissed off from last night. My Blue Devils lost to Oregon. Yeah, I mean, so there's going to be no Tar Heels versus Blue Devils this year. Kind of looking forward to that rivalry being reinvented. But I'll tell you one thing. I think North Carolina's going to make it to the finals, but it's definitely not going to be Oregon. I mean, that's like a Cinderella team. That's one of those Cinderella moments. So look for Oregon to probably get beat in the Elite Eight or at least the Final Four.
All right, cheers.
All right, cheers to that. Now let's get into some headlines, which is all going to be UFC because, some big news in the UFC. First and foremost, the sport of mixed martial arts has finally been legalized in the state of New York.
Oh, man.
Yes. That is democracy right there.
Right.
That is fucking democracy. I was so happy. I mean, I was hearing news about it, but I was like, let me wait on this for a while. Let me not,
You don't want to get your hopes up till you're sure.
Yeah, I didn't think it was newsworthy to talk about on the show, but now that it's been legalized, we can finally talk about it on the show.
Nice, yeah.
Of course, it still has to be signed by a mayor. I forget his name. It starts with his last name starts with a C, but it has to be signed. And he did say that he is going to sign it because he was for the sport.
Yeah.
But once it's
wait. Do you mean governor?
Yeah, I think it's governor.
Governor Cuomo. Yes.
Yeah, Governor Cuomo. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now, once Governor Cuomo signs it, the UFC can be off and running. They're trying to do a show in November at Madison Square Garden. And of course, you got to book Holly Holmes and Ronda Rousey rematch at the Garden in November.
Totally.
Oh, yes. I mean, everybody will be there. Jay-Z will be there. Puff Daddy will be there. Carmelo Anthony, the Yankees. Hell, even the cast from Mob Wives are going to be there. Including Drita, even though we'll have to separate Drita and Karen. But, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And
we talked about this before, but so it actually is a rematch with Home and Ronda, even though Home lost to Tate.
Not officially. It hasn't been officially announced. I mean, Misha was talking about it on UFC Fight Night. When she was there in Australia, she said there's a possibility. It's kind of up in the air right now.
Okay.
So.
Gotcha.
We don't know, and as soon as I know, you will know, and you fans will know.
Totally.
Trust me. And second of all, speaking of UFC Fight Night that night, good night of fights, especially Mark Hunt with another knockout, walk-away knockout, knocked out Frank Mir. That's his signature thing. He knocks guys out, and then he walks away. As soon as he hits them, and they go night-night, he just walks away he just walks away.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he just walks away. So
walk away, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. And Mark Hunt, I think his name is back. You can definitely talk about him being a top contender for the title. Maybe fighting the winner of Verdun versus Miocic pretty soon because Cain Velasquez is still out with an injury. As for Frank Mir, legendary fighter, former UFC heavyweight champion, has given us some of the best fights in the heavyweight division. But I think this is time for him to hang it up now. I think it's time. I think it's time to go away, to retire. I like Frank Mir, but I think his time is done.
Gotcha. Okay.
And last but not least, Paige VanZant on Dancing with the Stars. She came in fourth place.
Okay,
she
cool.
did pretty good, but she came in fourth, and we'll see. We'll see what happens later on in the week.
Totally.
And now it's time for Macho Doesn't Mean This.
Okay.
Gabe.
All right. Awesome. So I'm bringing back another old favorite this week. Something we talked about a long time ago is like I said before, we talked about the sort of line, perhaps blurred lines between fighting and sex. So to kind of further prove the point, I'm gonna talk about that there is actually a category of porn related to this. So what some call naked combat or porn. What's the word? Inspired by fighting and combat sports. So there's some of it is just. I mean, there's obviously different ways of to do things, and especially with porn, you're representing a fantasy. You're representing something that's usually private. It's a whole thing. But so obviously then to bring in something else like make it a reference to sports or a reference to fighting. It's a whole other thing. So I talked about last time how I personally like looking at the football players, and I think that there is porn devoted to that. So of course there would then be porn devoted to fighting. So some of it might just be cheesy and just have a boxing glove or something, something that doesn't actually go into the whole fighting aspect of it, just uses that as a prop. There can be that, but then there's also what is called, like I said, what's called naked combat, which they're actually duplicate the whole fighting experience. And they have different, the ones that I see are obviously two guys. They have different, fighting. They actually talk about their fighting backgrounds and stuff, and they do the usual shit talking their opponent, but of course the end game, very, very different. For one of the reasons I don't watch it as much is because it actually is, naked combat itself actually is pretty heavy on the fighting. Like, it takes a while to get to other physical action. So they take themselves seriously. They have the guy in the red shorts and the red ankle thing, and the blue shorts and the blue ankle. Later when their shorts come off, that's how they can distinguish each other, blue or red on their ankle. So anyways, it basically, like I said, up for a while it looks like a regular fight until things start getting a lot more sexual, and there's I think there's certain ways you can earn points, and like regular wrestling matches, you can earn points by holding down. You can earn points by by punch to the gut, that type of thing. But then on this, of course, you earn points if you can spank him, that type of thing.
By the way, is this all men, or is it there's women?
So yeah, like I said, I obviously watch the ones with two men, but I have heard that there is ones with two women as well. So when we talked last time about that sexuality and fighting can be close. I talked about you can sometimes feel sexual towards two women in the ring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine if it was like that, except it could actually go even further with the sexual fantasy of it. What if you could actually watch these women then, start tearing each other's clothes off, bra to bra, that type of thing.
Well, yeah, there would be a market for this, and we talked about this on our old show, which you can find on youtube.com/serpentscribe7. That's his channel. His own personal channel.
Right.
But here's the thing, and like I said, we talked about this before. There is a market for this, like in porn and stuff like that. But as far as being taken seriously as a legitimate sport, I mean, there is no way it would be taken as a serious event. I don't think too many people would buy it on pay-per-view unless it, they wouldn't buy it on pay-per-view and.
Well, I mean, that depends. The people that buy porn on pay-per-view, that's a completely different market, and they would probably buy it. But
yeah, but as far as it being taken as a serious sport, like having naked combat in I don't know, like the Staples Center or at the Mandalay Bay in Vegas, or that big or some arena in Brazil, I don't think it would do it wouldn't bring in the numbers that the UFC would, or that Pacquiao and Manny Pacquiao and Timothy Bradley would bring in.
Right, exactly. I mean, I agree that it definitely couldn't be like a legitimate sport. I personally do look forward to the day when it could be like a big public event, but obviously um, that wouldn't be about the just about the sport of it. That would be about the sex as well. So yeah, I don't think it would ever be considered a legitimate sport, but I think it could be a public event. Once we're a little bit more comfortable with sex and more comfortable with, I don't know. I think that could happen eventually. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I mean, like I said, because also you also got to keep in mind, in order for this, they would have to get sponsors too, and you might get a sponsor from like Penthouse or Playboy,
or lube companies,
or some lube companies, or a condom company.
Right.
But as far as getting a sponsorship from like Bud Light or Harley Davidson or Domino's or maybe Alberto beef jerky, good luck with that.
Good point. I can understand why they would stay away from that. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, but I mean, there is a big market for this, and like I said, some of it, isn't actually combat. Some, like I said, some of this is just porn with like a boxing glove in there. But some of it, like I said, this whole naked combat thing, does actually follow the same format as a fight. It's just obviously a very different end game. And I think that that's interesting, that people that are into it for the porn are actually interested enough to have it be like a fight beforehand. You know what I mean? Like I think that's where the crossover is of fight fans and of porn watchers. You know what I mean? And I think we talked about this last time. We talked about that the only other type of entertainment that draws as much people as sports is porn. So it's kind of interesting how that works.
Yeah, I mean, especially plus, when Tito was dating Jenna Jameson. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and stuff like that, and also and unfortunately, the thing would happen between War Machine and Christy Mack, which was, of course, we all know about that, the whole, like, what happened with domestic violence, him beating the shit out of her and stuff like that, and, of course, now he's in jail, and there's going to be a trial, I think, in August, so, but of course, I mean, there's no way he's getting out of jail. Yeah, he's going to be, they pushed for 20 years, 15 to 20 years on that shit. So for the next 15, 20 years, he's going to be in a jail with Bubba Buttfuck, and Bubba Buttfuck's going to fuck him in the ass.
Right. So yeah, that's also interesting. I think, that, I think I've said this before, that unfortunately there are people that can't be trusted and will go too far and whatever. But I think some of our violent tendencies and our overly sexual tendencies could be cured isn't the right word. Could be alleviated by allowing us to more publicly, more openly, experience the types of things that we like. So,
well, and also another thing I wanted to touch on with the whole trying to make naked combat as a legitimate sport, especially when this comes to women, I can see a lot of female boxers and female MMA fighters and female kickboxers right now just being like, I think they would kind of be pissed off, because the thing is, it's like, when people thought of women fighting, like I said in the last show, we thought of like something that would go on in some redneck bar in a country bumpkin place,
right?
And it's with the Jello wrestling and and the Foxy boxing and all that shit.
Right? Why was there Foxy boxing? Why was there Jello wrestling? Why was there mud wrestling?
Well, yeah,
except for that people wanted it to be that way.
Yeah, but there were women who really wanted to fight but weren't taken seriously, and it took women back, and it really took a Layla Ali, a Holly Holmes, a Ronda Rousey, and Kathy Long in kickboxing, and to move it forward, and now they were going to look at that and be like, okay, we're going back to this now. We've evolved. We're being taken more seriously. We're getting sponsors, and now you're gonna bring this shit and try to bring it into the mainstream. What the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, it's a reason I don't think it should be legitimate is that it does go from from a sport that's built itself to be very legitimate, down into our more baser instincts. So yes, I can agree that that something like that could definitely take away from the legitimacy, from the civilized nature of it. But again, that's why I don't think it ever will be considered a sport. But it's a type of entertainment, and like I said, one day it could be a type of live event as well. It doesn't mean it's a sport.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And also it would and also with the men doing it, it'll, it's gonna, once again, just like it still does for MMA, it's gonna it'll open the door for gay jokes too. Like, oh, you see, they're rolling around like fags. I told you, huh? They're a bunch of fags. They're rolling around and all that stuff.
So you're saying that wrestling had to overcome the whole homophobic slur because it's guys.
Well, yeah. There's still some people who say that with amateur wrestling. Like, the ones you see in high school, college, and the Olympics. But of course, now it is taken seriously because of the UFC. Thank God for the UFC.
Right.
But you're still gonna hear those jokes. I mean, well,
But yeah, so I do agree with that. But I disagree that it would be as I don't know what's the word. I disagree that it would be as like intolerable, as degrading, and as much of a step backwards for between men as it would be between women. I do see your point that women had to fight very hard to be taken legitimately in fighting. But as much as you can say that wrestling had to overcome the homophobic slurs about it, the thing is, men were never actually sexualized about it, whereas women had to overcome being sexualized in fighting. You see what I mean?
Well, that I do understand.
So that's the dominant culture. So I actually disagree that like, I think between men they could actually use it. They could actually use understanding what it's like to be sexualized. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, well, good luck trying to convince that to Dana White and Ronda, about that. I'm sure Ronda will definitely have a lot to say. Would definitely have a lot to say about that, knowing how she is.
True. Another point I was going to make is that a friend of my friend, he I actually know for a fact that he paid to for the naked combat between women. He paid to watch that type of porn. So with all the free porn available on the internet, you have to really like something in order to pay for it. And so the fact that he paid for it shows exactly how strong this market is. Maybe not between men. I don't know. Like I think that's also very strong. I think a lot of guys want to see guys not just get down to it, but get down and dirty with it. And I think especially we've already seen in the culture that a lot of straight guys would love to watch women fight and then get down and dirty with each other.
Yeah. Well, personally, the whole naked combat thing. I mean, with women and men, it wasn't really a turn on. For me, even with the women, it just didn't turn me on. So, I mean, if you like it, hey, more power to you. Go have fun. It's right. It's like with entertainment. There's chocolate and vanilla entertainment. You like. Well, I guess you could say the porn is the chocolate. Although I like chocolate ice cream, but if you like
for this metaphor, let's go with.
Yeah, if you like the chocolate, hey, keep your chocolate. But just let me have my vanilla.
Right. Totally. totally.
Exactly. And now we're getting into our blast from the past. Actually, I wanted to talk about this last week, but there was something else I wanted to bring up. And now it's what did I say? It was like the 25 year
25-year anniversary.
Yeah, 25-year anniversary of Mike Tyson versus Razor Ruddock. And we talked about Razor Ruddock on our show where we talked about the unsung heroes of boxing. And Razor Ruddock was really a heavy hitter in the 90s and stuff, and he really had what it took to be heavyweight champion, but then of course he ran into Mike Tyson twice. And this fight took place in March of 1991. This was on Showtime, and this was Mike Tyson's first fight on Showtime because he had just left HBO, and they were going over to Showtime. Don King pulled all his fighters on Showtime, including Julio Cesar Chavez. Chavez fought on the undercard of that fight, and the first fight between Robbie some Lawler, I think his name is Rob Lawler, and Roberto Duran was on that undercard too. Duran injured his shoulder and had to stop the fight. But but this fight was amazing, and of course there was talk of the slip knockdown in the second round, and which looked like a slip. I mean, there was a punch, but there was also a slip. He tripped.
I watched the highlights of this, and I noticed that as well. It was hard to tell whether he was actually knocked out or whatever. And he was actually smiling when he was trying to get back up. Do you remember that? And so that was a little interesting tidbit, and I couldn't quite tell if it was like smiling, like, oh, I tripped, like that type of smile, haha, or if it was like trying to look confident, which is I think another thing fighters do. You try and look confident as you're getting back up from being knocked down. So.
But the second knockdown Tyson scored, that was legit.
Right.
That was legit, and of course, this was the first time since losing the fight with Buster Douglas that Tyson had to go more rounds, because after the Douglas fight, his first two fights, with Williams, Michael Carr Williams, and Alex Stewart, they were all first round knockouts. Mm-hmm. And then, actually, I forgot who the other first person was. Sorry, alcohol's in my head. But there wasn't much work in the corner, But this fight, Richard Giacchetti, who was brought in after the Douglas fight, I don't know if you saw him in the corner, but he was like working with Tyson, yelling at him and stuff. In fact, the same round where he knocked him out in the second round, he was like, listen, you're falling asleep out there, okay? Quit looking for one damn punch. Go in the body and then go back up to the head. Move and slip the jab. He's like, listen, stay on the game plan. Stay on the game plan.
Right. Right, exactly.
And, of course, Giacchetti was famous for working with Larry Holmes, helped Larry Holmes become world champion. And then there was the round where Razor Ruddock was nailing Mike Tyson with some punches, like the sixth round. He was just like bap, bap, bap. And remember when Tyson he hit his chin to tell him hit me again. He's like, come on, hit me again. And Ruddock hit him, and Giacchetti was like, all right, listen, you settle down here. I don't want you. You're getting wild. When you get wild, you get carried away. I don't want you to get wild.
Interesting.
And plus Tyson was getting really dirty in that fight too. He was hitting below the belt. He was headbutting. What I'm saying? Mike Tyson was getting a little dirty out there.
Perhaps, yeah. But I mean, you also have to do something to counterbalance. I mean, when one of the first things the announcer said when the first bell rang was the what did he say? The height difference is noticeable right away. Remember?
Well, yeah, but Mike Tyson, when he was on the come up and when he was champion, he was knocking the big motherfuckers out anyway. So
true.
And then there was, and of course, and plus back in the day, there was also accusations of Tyson, with elbowing. He threw some elbows when he threw punches and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I guess we really saw it come to light, with the throwing the elbows and the headbutting and stuff like that.
Right.
And then, of course, in the seventh round, Tyson was finishing him off, and then, of course, Richard Steele stopped the fight, and that's when the brawl started. I mean, personally,
which that was very interesting. To hear them being all like, oh man, a brawl's breaking out in the stands, you know.
Yeah, like, you know, I mean, Giacchetti was under that too. Giacchetti got fucked up by some of the guys in Ruddock's quarter and stuff like that. But you know, the thing is, I thought Ruddock was on his way to go. He was ready to go.
Right.
You know, he was ready. Other than that 6th round, he was really doing nothing. He was intimidated by Tyson. You know, the punches and stuff like that was getting to him, and I think he was on the way. You know, I think that was a smart stop by Richard Steele. You know, of course, the fans were just booing and this was like a year after the Chavez-Taylor fight when he stopped the fight when, you know, Chavez knocked him down in the last round and, you know, referee waved it off.
Right.
You know, so like Richard Steele was already a marked man. Now he's got a full bullseye on his back after that fight. Right. I mean, they actually had to interview him backstage after the fight. You know, they interviewed him backstage.
They didn't want him going out there.
Yeah, I mean, he had some stuff thrown at him on the way out, and you know, they were like, you know, Richard Steele was like, listen, you know, he looked dazed, he looked confused. You know, he was throwing all these, you know, he was getting the fuck beaten out of him and stuff like that. Yeah. So. You know, he made a right decision in stopping that fight because Ruddock, even though Ruddock looked like he could still fight, he was ready to go. He was ready to get knocked out. I mean, the 3rd time he would have been knocked the fuck out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I don't know. I just think it's fascinating this sort of passion that the fans have too, you know, and like you said, that they were worried about the referee's safety and blah blah. I mean, it's I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if it's like the same type of thing or not with you know, with team sports. Like I know that people get loud and vocal and, you know, and call out bullshit or something with the, you know, with controversial calls in the team sports. But
yeah, they do that with basketball. You know, especially, you know, they do that with basketball, even with the slow motion and the replays. You know, it's like. You know, but the referees, of course, they don't have that luxury. So sometimes you got to give them a little leeway. But with boxing, you know, it's like, you know, as a referee, it's like they're a little harder on them.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, do you think it's true that fight fans and outside of the ring would get a lot more violent and would like?
Well, it would depend on the crowd, and I guess it depends on the fight too, because like. Right. You know, this was even though this was considered a real true test for Mike Tyson. Sorry, for Mike Tyson because you know, this was they thought that his first 2 fights after Douglas, you know, they were basically cakewalks because like he knocked him out in the 1st round. They thought Razor Ruddock was going to be more of a challenge, and by that time, you know, Holyfield was world champion. He actually the month before just beat George Foreman. So it was a matter of, okay, if Tyson is really ready for Evander Holyfield, he's got to get past Razor Ruddock.
Right. Gotcha.
So you know, people had a lot invested in this fight, you know, in pay-per-view and stuff like that. It was the first Showtime pay-per-view for Mike Tyson coming over from HBO and stuff, and plus the hype behind that fight too. I mean, even the press conference, you know, they looked like when they went face to face, it looked like they were gonna brawl and stuff like that in the press conference.
Right.
And then Mike Tyson, he said, you know, March 16th, you know, Mike Tyson versus Razor Ruddock. Razor Ruddock dies. If he's not dead, then it doesn't count. We'll have to do it all over again. So, and in fact, they did a post-fight show, like, afterwards. I think it was, like, a week or 2 after the show, and they had Tyson and Ruddock there. And Steve Albert, the guy who was doing the commentating, he says, you said that, you know, what do you think, Mike? He goes, you said, like, if Razor Ruddock isn't dead, then it doesn't count. And Mikey said, yeah, well, you see, he's not dead, so we got to do it all over again. Of course, eventually they did have the rematch. Exactly. They did have the rematch months later, which we'll get into when the anniversary comes up for that.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, that's also interesting, though, that you do the impression. You do it very well. And and I wonder, like, you know, I mean, he definitely would have been respected in almost anything else if he hadn't made this name for himself fighting. It's the way you imitate him, it's true. The way he talks, like, he could have been in any other walk of life. He could have been like, completely disrespected, taken down for that. But since he came out being the tough guy in the ring, then he can talk however he wants.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a guy who could literally knock you out with one shot. I mean, he was a throwback from the days of guys like Dempsey, Marciano, Joe Louis, and even not that long ago, George Foreman's and the Smoking Joe Frazier.
Right.
Like, this was a guy who could knock you out with one punch. I mean, and of course, the other thing about Tyson at this point, you had Richard Giacchetti. This was because after Rooney left, Mike Tyson was buying into his own hype. He wasn't really training as much for fights. I mean, the fight with Douglas, he did little to no training. It was basically just fucking Japanese women. And, I mean, he actually got knocked down in sparring one time during that fight. And when you bring in and then after the Douglas fight and getting his ass whooped, bringing in Richard Giacchetti, he was the guy to keep him back on track. And, of course, that's why he was... that's what led to the yelling in the corner, going like, "Hey, you're falling asleep out there. Wake up, wake the fuck up," and all that shit.
Right. I mean, so do you think that there's a danger for fighters to rest on their laurels and glide and think that they can glide through when really they should be training, that type of thing?
Well, yeah, exactly. Especially if you were a guy like like Mike Tyson. I mean, this is a guy who had little to no school education, and,
right.
This is, I mean, yeah, like, back in the days, Clayton, Jacobs, and Cuss, and Rooney, they taught him, like, what to say in press conferences and stuff like that, how to be nice to the media and stuff, but they didn't really teach him social skills, and, it's like, he was still like a hood guy from Brooklyn,
right.
Bed-Stuy,
Right.
So, this was a guy who was completely street. And, of course, by that time when Don King came in, that's when Mike Tyson really got thing, because Don King was telling about, oh, the white man, the white man's trying to take you down, you're just another nigger to them, and then he started getting into the pro-black thing. I mean, Mike said one time in an interview before the Alex Stewart fight, the pre-fight thing, you can catch it on HBO on YouTube. He said, like, listen, Don King and I, we're not anti-white, we're just pro-black. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you claim to be pro-black, but yeah, you got white people who are working for you, and it was white people that got you there. So how can you all of a sudden turn around and go, oh, I'm pro-black, and stuff like that.
So I mean, I think also what you're saying is that that's all he had. When it comes down to it, the reason he should have woken up in the ring, the reason he should have stayed on point is because what he really like you said, he didn't have the school smarts, he didn't have the social graces. What he had was his ability in the ring. And so if you he should have, I think you're saying he should have stayed on point, because if you lose that, like, that's like everything you got.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, he was still a savage and stuff like that. I mean, in fact, there's even a story one time after he won the heavyweight title, he one time participated in a mugging back in the streets of Brooklyn just for kicks. He was just doing it just for kicks.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, the before he won the title, leading up to the fight, he actually, and I don't know if you saw the Tyson documentary or the documentary on him by James Toback, or you read his book, but Mike Tyson, he fucked a prostitute and he got gonorrhea. He got gonorrhea before his first world title fight with Trevor Berbick back in '86. Yeah, so like that tells you, I mean, we knew of Mike Tyson, like, we knew of him, but we didn't know, like, he was still doing dirt in the streets.
Right, exactly, and that's why he should have put, that's why he should have, and then I guess did put more, get more serious about it, because that's the thing that was keeping him out of the streets. That's the thing that he had, like I said.
Yeah, and when we saw in the Ruddock fight with the low blows and in fact, it was worse in the two Ruddock fights because then he was delivering more low blows. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, it's a miracle that Razor Ruddock didn't lose his balls. But it became more a fact that hey, this guy has a capability of being dirty. But then it wasn't until the fight with Holyfield, the second fight with Holyfield, biting his ear and then trying to break Francis Botha's arm and hitting Orlin Norris after the bell, and then the fight with Francis Botha where he continued to fight when the referee was trying to stop it, and then he knocked out the referee. Then it became clearly clear that Mike Tyson is a dirty motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna ask you about that since we're talking so much about him. Like, do you think that he what do you think about the ear thing? And do you think he would have tried to bite it clean off?
Oh yeah, he definitely would have tried to bite it clear off. Because with Mike Tyson, I mean, that whole thing was, with Holyfield, it was like, he says it was out of frustration with Holyfield headbutting. I don't think Holyfield was trying to, purposely headbutt him. It's just that Holyfield was a big guy and, coming up and stuff like that in the grapple, of course you're going to get headbutted.
Okay.
But Mike Tyson, he just lost control, and
that's where you think it came from. You think he thought that that Holyfield was headbutting him. So I was like, if you put your head in here, I'm gonna bite your ear.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, and plus, Mike Tyson by that point, and plus keep in mind by that point Tyson was also out of jail too, and I guess people said coming out of jail, it maybe hardened him, and that it made him, even though he found religion and converted over to Islam. But trust me, there are definitely Muslims though looking at him going like, whoa, do we really want a guy like him representing us?
Right.
I mean, and by that time he kind of had no remorse too for what he'd done and stuff like that, especially after the Francis Botha fight when he tried to break his arm, and he said white boy, I told him, white boy, I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, there's that probably was a very prudent point for the Muslims at the time, and then Ali was a Muslim though too, and that's a very different thing, very different role model,
Oh yeah, I mean Ali. I mean, of course Ali was pro-black and stuff like that, but he never he never tried to break somebody's arm or bite their ear or throw low blows or anything like that. And I mean, it just made what Tyson did, it just made him later on. It just made him more like a bully. I mean, even after the Holyfield fight, even though he was still an attraction and people were still waiting to see him fight, but it was like, it was like, well, it was also a matter of, well, is he gonna break down again? What's he gonna do this time? Is he gonna kick a guy in the nuts? Is he gonna pull a pistol out of his trunks? Is he gonna walk to the ring with a battle axe? Is he gonna
right?
Is he gonna beat up the referee? What's he gonna do? And but the first and the second fight with Razor Ruddock, I mean, that was I think we were clearly seeing a sign that Mike Tyson could get really dirty if he wanted to.
Right.
But of course, the Holyfield fight was really where we saw, okay, this guy is definitely dirty. And as far as Razor Ruddock goes, I mean, Razor Ruddock really could have been he would have definitely given Holyfield a run for his money. I mean, he fought Lennox Lewis years later, and of course, Lennox Lewis whooped his ass. But Razor Ruddock, I mean, he could have been one of the great champions. Of course, the losing to Tyson, I mean, those two times. In fact, the second beating with Tyson was even worse. Like I said when we were talking about unsung heroes, I mean, he had he had a broken jaw. His face looked like a Mack truck. He was trying to make out with a Mack truck.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, it is the 30-year anniversary of Showtime Boxing, and I'm surprised they have on the anniversary of it. They haven't shown it. They haven't shown it on on their shows or on demand. I mean, they're showing the Chavez versus Greg Hagen fight that's coming up soon. They showed Leonard versus Norris. They showed both fights with Tyson and Holyfield, and they showed the Julian Jackson versus Greg versus Mike McCullen fight, and they even showed Tommy Hearns versus Iron Barkley. But as far as this fight, they haven't showed it yet. Hopefully, they'll show both those fights, and I hope they show Camacho versus Chavez too, and also Lewis versus Tyson as well.
Right. Gotcha.
But tell me, what did you think of the fight overall?
Yeah, well, it was very interesting to watch. It was different than the other ones we've talked about because the other ones, had sort of controversial calls or whatever. I did like this one. I thought it was, even though the ref said there was that height difference, you could tell by watching them that they were very, pretty well evenly matched, except, of course, like you said, Tyson got into the low blows and stuff like that. I don't know. I think it was more interesting to watch the audience reaction at the end in a way. It was kind of I like to. I wouldn't like to be there, but I would like to see it when there's a controversial call at a stadium and all the fans go wild and start ripping shit apart.
So you wouldn't want to be there. You really wouldn't want to be there when they start. So you wouldn't want to be there when they're. Well, actually, have you ever been to a fight live? Really? Or
I've been thinking about that. No.
Well, I've been to I went to a Smokers, which was like a kind of an underground thing. I went to a Smokers, I went to a kickboxing thing and a little grappling thing one time at a gym where I was doing volunteer work at.
Right.
But as far as a fight at the Garden or I never went there. But yeah, that's. I mean, of course, back in the day when it was Mike Tyson, I mean, of course it was crazy. In fact, the documentary, Champs. I mean, Mark Wahlberg was in there, and he said the first live fight I ever went to was a Tyson fight, and I said man, that it was crazy,
Right.
Exactly. I think he was actually at one of those fights, one of those Razor Ruddock fights with Mike Tyson, But of course, Mike Tyson drew a big crowd.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. Of course he drew a big crowd. So, and of course later on down the line, it got really crazy after getting out of prison and winning the titles, the WBC and WBA title backs, and then the Holyfield thing, and
yeah.
So, but it's a good fight to look up on YouTube. Look up Tyson versus Ruddock 1 and 2 online whenever you get the chance. And like I said, when the anniversary comes around again, when the anniversary of the second fight comes around, then we'll definitely going to be talking about that.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so look us up on Facebook, and where I got another blog that I'll be doing. I launched 2 blogs last week, and now I'm launching another one today.
Awesome.
And you can find us on YouTube, and also we do have a new show coming up called Ringside with Matt and Gabe, where we do our commentary on old school fights, boxing, kickboxing, and MMA. And
we do those live while watching the fights. That's our plan.
Yep, that's our plan. We're gonna watch those fights, and we'll do our own commentary and stuff like that. We won't be able to do it as often as we do this show, but because of Gabe's work schedule and stuff like that. But that's more of a weekend / when Gabe has a day off sort of thing.
Yep. So let's
leave
it there, folks.
Yeah, we'll be on the lookout for that, though.
Yeah.
And now we're going to end it here. And from Beantown to your town, this is the Beantown Beatdown. Saying, Vios con Dios.